No, it's the only one. I thought there was two buried
That
there.
one's gonna be a hard one.
I like that one.
You do? That's what you said.
I gotta start out.
Live from one Shadow Lane in Casco, Maine. It's the Early Bird Show with your host, Greg Plummer.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Early Bird Show. I am your host, Greg Plummer, and we're here from the Raymond Casco Historical Society, and this evening we have a wonderful guest, a lovely guest. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Trudy Files. Get over here.
Greg.
Hi, honey. Good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Hey, first I'd like to give you my condolences about the Super Bowl. I know you're a big Chiefs fan.
Yeah, a real big Chiefs fan. That game sucked. I couldn't even come with my Mahomes shirt.
I know. How the hell did you end up a Chiefs fan?
Because of Mahomes.
Really?
Nobody takes the quarterback position quite like him.
You didn't have a man crush on Travis Kelce or something?
No.
You're not in competition with Taylor Swift?
No.
No.
No, I'm a Mahomes.
There you go.
Mahomes fan all the way.
Yeah, that was a straight ass
No, it's a
whooping,
fun
huh?
team.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts played a good game, though.
Oh, I have all respect for Philly. I would have cheered for them if they were playing anybody else, but
Yeah.
couldn't do it this year.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's.
I got you this balloon up here. It's a gorilla because I figured it would remind you of me. And I got you this big card. It says Trudy on it.
Oh,
There you go. Oh, and I got you some. A box
so
of
sweet.
a box of chocolates. But fair warning, I've already had a couple of them.
speaking of sweet.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go. It says, "It's the perfect day to tell you just how wonderful you are. All my love, Greg."
oh, muffin. You should know.
Isn't that cunning?
It is wicked kind of.
So you can have chocolates whenever you want. I only ate a couple. I got hungry.
Yeah, no problem.
You like my new desk?
I love your new
It's
desk.
Swedish.
That's Swedish.
Yeah, I know. It's from a company called IKEA. Or IKEA, I don't know how they pronounce
Pretty
it.
classy.
All right. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so
You
much.
are the second guest on the Early Bird
It's
Show.
a hard act to follow.
I know, Wayne Whitney.
Mr. Whitney.
Episode 1 was fantastic.
It sure was.
So we're going to start off simple. Where were you born?
I was born in Portland, Maine at Maine Mountain.
At Maine Med?
Yep.
Okay. And when was that? What year?
That was 1955, which was also a good year for the Chevy.
Yeah, 55 Chevy. Yeah,
Yep.
good year for the 55 Chevy.
Yep.
There you
And,
go.
My dad was told a few weeks ahead of time that if we didn't have running water in the farmhouse, then she wasn't coming home with me. So that was the start of running water at the farmhouse.
So there was no running water at the farmhouse.
There was not.
And where was the farmhouse?
Farmhouse is on Egypt Road, and it's third generation. I'm the third generation living there, but fifth generation here in town.
Of the 5th generation Files here in town?
Yep, fifth generation Files here in town.
Okay, what year, so when was the farm built, do you know?
The farm was built in 1865, I believe.
Okay, and when did your parents own the farm?
I think that was 1893.
1893. Wow, right around the turn of the century.
Yep.
Okay, you got your water? You good? I don't know if I cleaned that
I'm
coffee
good.
cup out. Must have some dust in it.
So we had the running water, but we still had an outhouse for several years. But that, I guess, was okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So the family is from the Raymond area then, generation.
The Files family definitely is from the Raymond area, 5 generations.
What was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was Knapp, Knapp.
Okay. I know some Knapps up in Bridgeton. I wonder if they're any relation. They're wild. These guys are friggin' wild.
Grandfather Knapp was from, I think, the Weld area. And my grandmother on my maternal side was from Jonesport, Maine, was her birthplace.
Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of like my home away from home. So I've got the upbringing of the agricultural zone here in Raymond, but the coastal fishing community of the Jonesport area.
Did you spend a lot of time up there as well?
I did.
Yeah.
As much as I could in the summer. I'd go down there with my grandmother, and it's still like my home away from home. They treat me like I live there.
So you say your grandmother, did you know your grandparents on the Files side growing up?
No, they passed away way before I was born.
Before you were born, yeah.
Yeah.
And what your grandmother on your mother's side, what was her name?
Her name was Minnie Knapp.
Minnie? That's
Minnie,
cute,
yep,
huh?
yeah. And she was from Yarmouth, like a matriarch of Yarmouth.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what did your folks do growing up?
My folks growing up, my mother did clerical work, mostly out of Portland. And my dad was road commissioner here in town.
In Raymond?
In Raymond,
okay.
For 26 years. I think it was 1941 to 69, if that math adds up. But
sure.
It was 26 years, and he passed away in 69, and that was the end of that. But he also had a gentleman's farm.
Wait, what's a gentleman's farm? Is that like a gentleman's club, but with farming animals?
Right, exactly. I don't know, he wouldn't have time for that. Gentleman's farm. So few had a cattle and a chicken house full of hens and one pig. It's sort of, we would rely on the chickens and the pig, and we had beef cattle. Before I was born, he did some dairy work, but then regulations changed, and so he just stuck to, beef cattle and just,
That's pretty impressive, though, to be able to be road commissioner and do all that farming, though.
It was amazing. Plus, I think it would have been in 63 when I was 8 years old. My parents divorced, and they both knew it was in my best interest to stay with him at the farm. So he had sole custody.
Oh, no kidding. Huh?
And which was pretty unusual for a guy back then, but you couldn't ask for a better keeper. So he had me in tow, plus everything else. And as an adult, it just amazes me how there were enough hours in the day, to do all that.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. That road commissioner, single dad. And that was kind of like unheard of back then.
It really was.
Did you have like a nanny or anything, or?
We did have nannies, but on top of, before I get to the nanny, he was also a great provider. He would provide meat and vegetables because we had big gardens to people in need. I mean, everybody knew everybody else back then, and he knew who could use some help with food because a number of kids or whatever. So he was always very generous. So I'd be riding around with him as we dropped things off to different families. But as far as housekeepers...
Wait, real quick. What was your father's name?
His name was Gardner Files.
Gardner. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any nicknames or anything?
Some of his friends would call him Trapper. Apparently they did that as kids or something.
Yeah.
But I always referred to him as Dita my whole life.
Dita?
Yeah, even though I was 12, 13 years old, people were like, why do you call him Dita?
Dita.
Maybe I couldn't say Daddy, I don't know.
I like that, though.
Yeah.
What was your mother's name?
My mom's name was Electa.
Electa?
Electa.
That's an interesting name. Where's that from?
And that represents one of the points of the Eastern Star, which she was very much involved in.
Really?
Yeah, I broke the generational cycle of Eastern Star work. But
yeah, there's no point named Trudy.
no point named Trudy. No.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Go back to, so you were talking about so you didn't have a nanny growing up. You were kind of What was the deal with there? So he's busy, he's farming, he's doing the road commissioner for the town of Raymond.
Exactly.
You're 8, 9 years old at this point. So
Yeah.
what's little Trudy doing?
Well, he'd like him there when I got home from school. I also had a very good neighbor a short distance away, Mildred and Guy Smith. And sometimes I could go there, which I was more than happy to do. But if he brought in housekeepers at the house, I would do my darndest to drive him off, let's say.
Oh, really?
And when I was old enough to jump on my bike, I would even go out to East Raymond and visit some of the lady friends I knew out there.
So what'd you do? Because you're on Egypt Road, right?
I was on Egypt Road.
So you go up to 85 and...
Yep, I just haul ass out to 85, pull in and visit somebody under the pretense I was just there to have cookies and talk to them.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I would sit where I could look out the window and watch the housekeepers going up and down 85 looking for me. And I would wait until my father was due home, and then I'd go back. But inevitably, because I was terribly spoiled, he would tell them they didn't need to come back. And
How many housekeepers did you go through?
quite a few. And a lot of them were local women that were nice enough, but I thought we were a good team and we could do it without their help.
Right.
Yeah.
So were you always kind of like a little bit of a rebel?
A little bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
Probably the earliest sign of rebellion. If I didn't want to do something, I just didn't want to do it.
Sure.
And piano lessons were important to my mom because she could play by ear. It all came very easy to her. And I was against it, the entire way. So one afternoon, I decided if I dropped pennies down between all the keys, that might allow me to get my way. And sure enough, after paying the piano man to come
fix the piano?
Yeah, fix the piano. We were all done with that too.
Now, did you get I
would get it
like king, king, king. So did you get were you a good student? Did you get in trouble in school too, or?
I was brought up to be really respectful, so I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. But I had my moments. Lady that a lot of people would know that ran Clow's store in East Raymond. Alva Clow was a school teacher, and I had known Alva. I'd probably been in that store every week of my life since I was born, so I knew her well. She had been my teacher in 2nd or 3rd grade, but in 5th or 6th, one day I was standing in the lunch line, and my cousin set me up and kind of quietly said, "Tell Mark what you said about Mrs. Clow last night." And little did I know, Mrs. Clow was within earshot right behind me. And I said, "Oh, Mrs. Clow is growing a beard." And loud enough so Mrs. Clow, who was behind me, firmly placed her hand on my shoulder and marched me to her 2nd grade classroom, where I had to spend the rest of the afternoon until school was out. Shortly before dismissal, Mr. Talbot, who seemed like 9 feet tall, came to the door, and nothing really needed to be said. I had plenty of time to realize that, she was a dear lady, and if you're going to shoot your mouth off, make sure you do it for the right reasons, not just to impress friends or just be careful when you shoot your mouth off and what you have to say.
Now you're the one that's got to shave the beard.
Exactly. Yeah, down there is on my Amazon.
So you get more facial hair than I do. All mine migrated to my shoulders and back.
Exactly. Yeah, but anyway, I still shoot my mouth off, but I hope I'm more selective than and represent kindness.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, every kid, kids get in trouble.
Kids.
Yeah, kids are kids.
Let's see. Any other scrapes?
I did my fair share of getting in trouble. Yeah. Any more scrapes on the farm? How was farm life like growing up?
Farm life it could be dangerous.
Did you get beat up? on the farm? Like, not literally like beat up, but like did she like get kicked by any mules or anything?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I was just joking.
No. When I was 3 years old, my dad we had a pair of Belgian workhorses, and he was leading one of them to the water hole, and I got into the lane and was either kicked or stepped on by the other workhorse. And, I had snuck out without supervision.
Go figure.
He could hear me screaming from the water hole, my mother from the house, and it had broken my femur. And I was in double traction for a long time, including when I was brought home. There's a rocking chair with all the wooden arms have worn from my 2 casts, like rubbing on them.
How old were you when this happened?
3.
3?
Yep.
With a broken femur? Mm-hmm. My Lord.
And then 10 years later, the very same horse, Becky Sawyer had come up. She knew a lot about saddling him. We had a big saddle for the workhorse. And she had the saddle. I was hanging on behind her. And all of a sudden, we hadn't got that girth quite tight enough. And the saddle slid to the left.
Oh.
And we all slid to the left. And I stuck my arm out to break my fall. And it did. But it broke my wrist. Same horse, 10 years later.
So, broken wrist at 13, broken femur at 3.
Yeah, same.
Did you send that puppy to the
Same
glue factory or what? About after that, be
Same
like,
Belgian
see you
workhorse.
later. Yeah.
But one of those workhorses saved me one Sunday. My dad, I was his shadow. I wanted to be everywhere with him. And he was loading up the dung cart to have one of the horses wheel it down to the garden area. And it happened to be a Sunday. My mother had dressed me all up in the girly clothes for Sunday school and church. But again, I had snuck out. My dad didn't know how to say no to me pretty much. So when I wanted to climb aboard with him, it was no problem. So we're headed to the garden. I'm riding along behind, holding his shoulders and kind of perched on the front end of that tongue cart. And he had a rock or something, and it jolted, and the tongue let go, and I was hurled right into the middle of that tongue cart. And he had to present me to my mother, which clearly got me out of going to Sunday school, and I was more than happy to
You're like,
continue dunging with him.
Yeah, you just had to go swim in a pile of horse dung. Oh, boy, that's brutal, huh?
Yeah, good times on the farm.
So, you had mentioned going and living in Yarmouth. Now, did your folks got divorced when you were 8 years old?
Yeah, when I was 8 years old.
Okay, and then your dad had sole custody. So, what led up to you going to Yarmouth?
So when he passed away, he had.
And when was that?
1969.
Oh, so you were still pretty young then.
Yeah, I was 13.
Okay, so so it was 5 years later.
Yeah.
So was he a lot older than your mom?
Yeah, he was 20 years old.
Okay. Okay, so
mom.
what were the circumstances, if you don't mind me asking, of him passing away?
He had a cerebral hemorrhage working on the garden
Oh, wow.
and died the following. He didn't live long. And he had already arranged with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, to be, if something like that should happen, that she would be my legal guardian. And again, it was realized that was the best situation at the, for me.
To go live with Graham. Now this was Minnie.
This was Minnie Knapp in Yarmouth, and so it was a good move. I got to enter Yarmouth High School as a freshman and graduate there, and knew a couple of kids because she also had the place on Raymond Pond, which was one of the original camps.
Oh, really? Okay.
Built in the 40s. So I knew, and there were a couple of Yarmouth kids on the lake, so I didn't go into the high school totally.
Raymond Pond, a.k.a. Little Rattlesnake.
A.k.a. Little Rattlesnake.
Little Rattlesnake,
Yep.
for all you people out there.
Interesting
Little
enough,
lesson.
that camp was built in Yarmouth in 2 pieces.
Oh, no kidding. And they friggin' moved it there, huh?
And they got it moved there. But to get to the property, you have to cross Gay Brook, and there wasn't a culvert there yet. There was no road across the brook, so they put both parts of the camp on a barge and floated it across the cove, and then pieced it together and used the rocks in the area to build the chimney and fireplace.
Foundation.
My grandfather, and
Yeah, that brook still to this day is just the road going over. It's just
it's skinny.
you can barely get through it.
It's skinny, and I think that's what my father was doing down in there, dealing with that culvert and making a road across there, because that is where he met my mother.
Really?
Yeah, she was digging out the septic tank, or the holding tank, or whatever it was called back then, septic tank, I guess. And he came to get a drink of water or something, and looked down the hole and said, well, what's a pretty young thing like you doing down there?
Wow.
And
Jeez.
I think that's what led up to, here I am.
Well, I guess I'll start looking down in septic tank holes to find a chick. So what did Minnie do?
Minnie was really a jack of all trades, but as her occupation was a pharmacist.
Oh,
And
that must have been pretty unique too. For
it was unique.
to have a female pharmacist back then.
Yep, and she was taught by her husband. She didn't have to go to the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy or anything, but she passed whatever exams she needed to pass. And at the time of her death in 1976, she was the oldest practicing woman pharmacist in the entire nation.
What? Really?
And was recognized for that shortly before her passing. Yeah.
And you had said that she was a state representative too, right?
She was a state representative from, I think, 50 something to 61.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's 2 terms, but it did interfere. I know when she was a pharmacist at Pineland Hospital for 10 years, and when she ran for legislature, she had to quit being a pharmacist at Pineland Hospital because they considered it
Like a conflict of interest or
yeah,
something?
conflict of interest. It was a state-run hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she had to give that up, but yeah, she did that for 10 years.
So that must have been pretty. So here you go from, coming from a single-parent household, being raised by essentially by your father, to now you're being raised from 13 to graduate in high school by your grandmother.
Right.
So talk about who, by all intents and purposes, sounds like a pretty unique woman. So
Yeah.
were there other skill sets that you learned from her?
Oh my gosh. She was hugely instrumental in my life, way before I even moved in with her. But she was a marksman. She loved to hunt. She had been recognized as getting one of the biggest bucks in Maine.
Really?
Fished flagstaff. She always talked a lot about flagstaff. I love to fish, thanks to her and lots of other people, but I've never fished that area. When I was about 12, I think we had gone there from her camp, her house in Yarmouth, but for whatever reason, she had forgotten her key to the camp. Didn't want to drive back to Yarmouth for it. So she got a piece of wood, stove out the window close to the door, the kitchen window, so she could reach in, and said, we'll just put out another pane of glass in the morning. So she taught me that day or the next day how to
glaze. That's where you learned how to glaze?
That's where I learned how to glaze.
For anyone that doesn't know, Trudy glazed 96 individual pieces of glass that are in the blacksmith shop. She was the glazing queen because nobody else wanted to do it.
No.
And anyone that's ever glazed a window knows how much of a pain in the ass
For some
it is.
reason, I had a knack for it, and I
You
just...
still do.
I know. And I mentioned it one day, and there you go, 96 women.
I'm offering that as a service, and you just don't know it. I'm offering, if you got old windows to fix, I'll offer that, and then I'll fix everything. Then I'm going to hand it off to you to glaze it.
this might be a good time to say this is why I had to buy a silicone ring, because I did so many. I can't get a ring on my ring finger anymore.
Oh, really?
It changed. It's
All swelled right up, or what?
all swelled. All my knuckles got swelled right up. Yep.
So you graduate. So you went to high school in Yarmouth?
I did. I went to high school in Yarmouth.
How was that?
That was the time to be there, I think.
Yeah. What years would that have been?
That would have been graduated in '73, so kind of
69 to 73.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you play any sports?
Played a little softball the first couple of years, but once camp opened, and I wanted to be on Raymond Pond too, so I don't think I ever saw. Sadly, I never saw a season out in softball, but basketball was my thing, and did play varsity all 4 years.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
What position did you play?
Shooting forward. I mean, I had a good shot, but I was some of the height of the team too, so underneath.
So you're kind of like a little bit
Kinda
of
like
everything.
everywhere.
Yeah. You're the tallest.
We didn't run plays a whole lot. I just think
No.
we were out there, I think, winging it a lot of time, but we did all right.
Really? You're just on the block, like.
Yeah, we did all right.
Yeah. Like Hakeem Olajuwon or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Drop stepping on fools. Good. Did you? How were you as a student in high school? Were you a pretty good student?
I didn't work very hard at
Did you
it.
party in high school?
I did party in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's
I
hear
probably partied.
Let's hear a partying story.
Oh dear. A partying story in high school.
So did you like? You went to school in Yarmouth. Were you like, dude, I'm going up to camp this weekend? Did you go get hot up to camp or what?
I was allowed to do a lot in high school, that by the time I got to college, partying wasn't as big a deal anymore, because I had done-
that was like indicative of the day, though.
It was.
Like people were a lot more accustomed to like being able to like. When did the drinking age change? Wasn't it right around
It
then?
kind of followed us right around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you were like, it was legal for you to have a couple pops when you're 18 back then, right?
Yep, when we were 18. A lot of us weren't. We'd go out to Sings in Westbrook. I mean, we were a close class. There might be like 20 of us show up at Sings, and a lot of us were 17, but they didn't card.
Yeah, they
just
didn't care.
They didn't bother.
No, they just wanted.
There weren't probably as many 18-year-olds as 17, but we were there more than once, for sure.
Yeah. And what about like? Did you ever throw any parties up to camp and on Raymond Pond or what?
I did. Yeah, we had to.
I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Well, under the pretense that one Friday, I got permission. Could ask my grandmother, could I go up to camp with? I think it was a cookout for 3, and just stay overnight, and then we'd be home. But what really was happening was the entire senior class being invited, because there were 2 of us that had a camp on Raymond Pond. And I think an awful lot of them showed up.
So you had the rage. Your class wasn't that big. How many people in your class? Like 40?
83.
83? Holy shit, that's a lot.
Yeah, that was a good
For
size
back then?
class. Yeah, and so
That's
I went
quite a
up.
bit.
I took a ride up on my motorcycle,
What?
and
The motorcycle? What was that?
72 Yamaha,
No way. How big was it?
250.
A 250?
Yeah, so I had gone up on the bike, and
Oh my God.
one of the 3 cookout girls was supposed to stop and get my sleeping bag and I don't know what else, stuff I didn't want to carry on the bike. Well, by the time they got to my house in Yarmouth, my grandmother met him at the door, and a classmate's mom had gotten wind of what really was happening, and therefore my grandmother knew. And I had a terrible time at the party, because she just said, the neighbors are going to keep an eye on what's going on, and I know you've lied. You've lied. And
So Grammy was pissed.
she was pissed, and I just knew she was wicked pissed. So the party went on, but I can't say as I had a really good time, but a lot of kids did.
Do you have any other stories you want to share about growing up in Raymond?
I can think of one more that probably ought to be said without passing. Again, I think a lot happened at 13, but when I was around 12, 13, my father decided it was a good time to start teaching me how to drive, because I think, well, Raymond buses didn't come down Egypt Road ever in my whole life. I was picked up by Lloyd Martin's wife, Gloria, and he stored the bus. I don't know if he owned them, but he was a bus driver, but all the buses were at his place.
Where was his place?
On just beyond the school, on Route 85.
On 85? Okay.
Yeah, just beyond the schools going down over the hill. It was a warehouse that stored food or something. There's a lot of cement foundations that are sitting there with nothing on them right there. So anyway, my father had it in his head that probably when I started high school, he could get special permission for me to drive out to the end of Egypt Road at 85 and park at the fire station that's there, that's now there at least. I think there always was one. And that would be okay. I would be able to drive there even though I didn't have a license, because I wouldn't have had one yet. I was a freshman. So anyway, he started, anytime we'd go to Yarmouth, he thought that'd be a good time for me to drive. And I would drive all the way to Yarmouth. It was an automatic, a Chevy.
With him in shotgun?
With him in shotgun.
Yeah. And you're 13.
And I'm 12 or 13, probably 13. And it was just all okay with him. He was comfortable. Apparently I was good at it. I know I was. But one day, for whatever reason, we came into Gray and he wanted to take a left and go down 115 towards Wyndham. And we'd no more got beyond, we hadn't gone far down 115. And I look in the rear view and I see blues coming.
Oh, shit.
And I did. I just was like, oh, shit. I right away said, there's a sheriff coming. How are we going to swap places now? And he says, we're not. He said, I said, do you want me to pull over? No, just keep driving.
Be cool.
Be cool. Yeah, and sure, thank God that blue car, that sheriff went right out around us, and off he went, and I just was dying. Another time.
I'm trying to imagine what you looked like at 13, though. So we're going to have to put a couple pictures up.
Yeah.
Of you, at 13 years old. Is this when you're sitting on a pillow or something? I can just see it, What kind of car was it? Do you remember?
It was an automatic Chevy. It was white. I don't know if it was a Bel Air. Is that a Chevy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe.
So this would have been 68,
or an Impala.
You said you were born in 55?
Did they make an Impala?
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, Chevy Impala.
I think it might have been that.
Yeah. Yeah, flipping the switches, get the hydraulics. Anyhow.
No. Another time, though, we were coming back, and it was winter, and I don't know, I think it became a little slushy, a slippery, a little greasy. And he was so comfortable, and he didn't drink, so it wasn't because of that he had nodded off. He was taking a little snooze. And at one point, I don't know, the car fishtailed just the littlest bit. Wasn't bad, it didn't scare me. I mean, I came out of it all right. But as soon as that started fishtail, his eyes came open and he said, here, here, here. Like he was talking to one of the horses.
Was he talking to one of the horses?
Yeah.
Come on, baby.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But, yeah.
He gathered up?
Yeah, I came out of that just fine. He was all right. I don't think, his underwear was still clean. Yeah. But I never lived to, he didn't live long enough to see if I was going to get special permission to drive to 85, which I doubt would have been a reality, but that was his plan.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsors.
Okay.
The Early Bird Show is brought to you by
Ben Gay. Break the grip of pain. And Hall Funeral Home. You call, we haul.